Welcome to the Thrive Show, where we offer you practical advice that can be implemented into your daily spiritual lives to help you build a thriving home and a thriving sphere. Thanks for joining us. All right. Well, hello, everybody, and thanks for tuning in to this episode of the Thrive Show. Whether you're listening on the podcast or watching us online, we're glad that you chose to be here with us today. Tonight, we are going to be talking about thriving relationships within our spheres. And if you've never tuned in before, if you don't know what we mean by a thriving sphere, we're talking about pretty much anyone that you have a chance to come in contact with in your daily life, someone from your sphere. So we've got our thriving homes, we've got our thriving spheres, and today we're going to be breaking that down even just a little bit more into our neighborhood, our neighbors, the people directly within our sphere, probably the people closest to us on a daily basis other than our families. So I am joined today by my guest. You may know her as my wife, Ashley Wood. Welcome. Thanks for joining us on the Thrive Show here today. First of all, I wanted to start off with just a softball question here. What does it mean to be a good neighbor?
Well, for me, that kind of a softball question, I don't feel like I could have just a softball answer. But what comes to mind is like loving like Jesus would love. Before he left us with a command. And I have my phone with me because I want to read that. He said, "Let me give you a new command. Love one another. In the same way I loved you, you love one another. This is how everyone will recognize that you are my disciples, when they see the love you have for each other." So for me, being a good neighbor is just loving your neighbor. And that can be really deep. That can also be just reaching them in tangible ways so that when they see you, they see Jesus.
Perfect. That's a great answer. I don't think that was softball at all. I think that was great. So just to give our viewers, our listeners, a little glimpse into Ashley and I's lives. We started off as a newlywed couple. Well, once we moved back here to Indiana, we were kind of in a place where we weren't super financially stable at all, but through the help of some family, my grandparents specifically, we were able to buy our first home without any kind of loan, with no mortgage. It was a piece of junk. Okay, if you've ever seen the movie Money Pit, you probably know what I'm talking about. You can get a picture, but on a much smaller scale. But we took what we had available to us, and we spent a year working on it. So we kind of developed this goal, this personal goal for our family, that we could, be in our dream home someday, maybe somewhere out in the country with a little bit of land or something, to raise our family in a home without a mortgage. So we wanted a dream home without a mortgage, and we were going to work our way up. We sold that house. We moved into this new one eventually and started over from scratch again. It was another one, just a fixer-upper that we needed, that needed a lot of work. And somewhere along those lines, our ambitions kind of changed a little bit. I'm going to let Ashley expand on that a little bit because part of the reason we decided to pause those ambitions of moving on is because Ashley, you had a gut feeling that we were being called to stay. So can you walk us through a little bit about how you felt about that calling, what that calling actually is?
Yeah, I guess for me, being a believer, being someone who wants to love people well and wants to love them like Jesus would love them. For me, I've felt strongly about starting where you are, starting with your neighbors directly next to you and down the street from you and just in your sphere. So for me, in our old home that you talked about, we had a bunch of little babies and toddlers, and that time was really busy. So for me, I, looking back, always felt like I wish I would have done more. I felt like there was more I could have done to reach our neighbors, to kind of like plant that seed of kind of being Jesus in their life. And ultimately, my goal is to bring people to Jesus. And that can be really extravagant, and that can be like really small acts of kindness. And so I always felt like I didn't do enough. I always felt like I failed in some way. Now, there are some connections that we made that we still have, and we're still able to kind of like work toward those and those relationships. But when we got to our current house, those feelings like came with me, and I just felt really strongly that we needed to stay where we were, that God opened up this home for us to be a light in our community, in our neighborhood, with our neighbors. And that has looked like being available for really hard times for our neighbors, when, you could easily just be a spectator. And it's looked like kids coming in our yard, because we've been blessed with this yard, that we are able to minister to and have kids for dinner and pray with them. And it's looked like people coming door to door and us having the opportunity to sit with them and talk with them about Jesus, and not really like asking anything from them, but just showing them that light and that only comes from Jesus. So I've just felt really called to do that, to stay where I am.
So you mentioned this calling. You felt called to stay where we are now. What do you think, where did that calling originate from? What was the calling? Who was it from?
Yeah, so in short, I feel like it was a spirit-led thing. I think that all of us, whether we know it or not, have that like nudge to do the right thing, to see something that needs done, see someone who needs help, see like you think, oh, I feel like I should go talk to that person. Those are like the things for me that are like spirit-led. And so yeah.
So you felt the Spirit prompting in that aspect of your life. How did you know it was the Spirit, or how did you feel the Spirit prompting? What did that feel like inside of you when you felt that?
Yeah, for me, like, are you just wanting like a practical way to explain it?
Yeah, what if you're talking to someone who has no idea what you're talking about, who has never had an experience where, maybe they felt like they should, maybe they call it their conscience,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But what does it feel like to feel the Spirit prompting you?
Yeah, for me, and I can just give you an example. There was one time I was at Walmart, and I was driving in my van, and I saw the guy who works there, and he had really rough shoes on, and I felt this like intense, like almost like a nervous energy, like a nudge. It's like I had this overwhelming sense of go buy him shoes, and and this is something I learn and I practice, like being obedient when I feel that. I never did end up buying him shoes, but I think about that all the time. And every time I see him, I think, and like try to be receptive to like how I can still minister to him. But it's just that nudge that you feel like I like, I think I should go do something about that. Yeah, it's hard to explain, but I think that we all have those feelings, and whether we know why they're there or where they come from, that's where, for me, I believe it's a spirit-led thing. And I think being in tune with that can take practice.
So, in short, it's kind of a gut feeling. It's something that you have to train yourself to listen to. It's not just some like gift that we have. Obviously, once we've been baptized, like, we have that gift of the Spirit. But we still have to train. That doesn't mean like we're in tune right away, right?
Mm-hmm.
We have to train ourselves to listen and to act on those moments. Are you a very outgoing person? Like, are you eager to like put yourself out there for a stranger?
I am what I consider an extroverted introvert. So, no. In short, I am not a super outgoing person. When I'm around people I'm comfortable with, I'm a lot more outgoing than people that I don't know. So, I am not one to I'm not the like leader, life of the party. I'm the like quiet one that has fun with what everyone else has decided to do. So, I have not always been a very outgoing person, eager to go talk to someone.
So when you feel the Spirit prompting in a way that is calling you to do something, to go to something, like you mentioned in the parking lot there,
Mm-hmm.
like, that's not a very natural thing for you to just respond to. And that's kind of what I'm getting at there. Like, but we need to train to, first of all, to recognize those Spirit promptings, and then practice executing that, following up on that. And there will be times where we fail. There will be times where we succeed, where we have awesome testimonies that come out of it. But train yourself to recognize, and then additional training, respond to those Spirit promptings. So now, to bring it back, to shrink that sphere in just a little bit more, on target with the people probably closest to us in our daily spheres, our neighbors, the people that we have most opportunity to interact with. A lot has changed in the last 30, 40, 50 years. Women in the workplace are not at home all the time now. We have societal fears that keep us from sending our kids all over the place anymore. People work different shifts and different jobs, and we just don't interact with our neighbors as much as what was the norm decades ago. So in this day and age that we're in right now, why is it so important for you to have this missional mindset within your neighborhood, within our neighborhood?
Well, I believe really strongly that we all have our own gifts and talents and abilities and ways that we can reach people and serve people. And I believe that God places people in your life for you to serve, for you to fulfill His mission for that person, for that family, whatever that looks like. And I think when you are listening for that and you have that like missional mindset, you're always looking for, I guess, a way that you can be that to a person or a family. So
I would assume then that you know all of your neighbors.
I actually don't know all of our neighbors super well. We're very friendly with our neighbors, and I believe we've met most of our neighbors on our street, if not all. But like, again, there's just something specific about like when you're listening for and you're receptive of where the Spirit is prompting you to serve and to build up.
And sometimes it's not it's not developing a, intimate relationship right away. Sometimes it's just an opportunity to plant the seed, right? That might lead to something
absolutely.
Further on down the road. And I know that you and I have both experienced that within our neighborhood as well. We're not in the welcome basket and casserole era anymore, but there are still ways that we can reach our neighbors around us. We have certainly, we're pretty centrally located. We're between a splash pad and a park. We have lots of families around us that have kids. There's lots of kids that are going down our road all the time. Young families, some Christian, some not. But how have you appreciated, after you've felt that call to obedience to stay in this house, what kind of fruit have you seen from being obedient to that calling that you felt?
Yeah, so I guess if I could broaden that a little bit, what comes to mind is, in our old house, we didn't love our neighborhood necessarily, and we didn't really have much of a yard for our kids to play in. And so at the time, I always had this desire and dream of this big yard for our kids to run around in and play in. And at the time, I had no idea that it would result in how I felt called now. I think for us, our ambitions to be mortgage free and a big farmhouse with land and everything that we think we've made it, and we've reached what we think is the ultimate goal or what will make us happy, is what I've come to find is just really selfish. And not that it's bad to have those goals. I could still see us doing that someday, if we feel like we're done with where we are. But what I have seen with what we have now is I feel like it's almost like God gave us more so that we could use it more. It's it makes me think of the quote, when you have more than you need, build a longer table, not a higher fence. And that's literally what I feel like we've done. And there's even been times that I've thought, oh, it'd be so nice to have a fenced-in backyard so our kids will stay in. It'll keep everything in. It'll keep things out. It'll just be this little oasis for our family. But I've been reminded again and again that that would be missing so many opportunities to reach those who need Jesus. And I didn't think I would get emotional about that.
But it's true, we are full of opportunities where we're at right now. Like I said, neighborhood kids walking all the time, and we have to, I was going to ask a question about practical ways to show love to your neighbors, or how to recognize needs around you in your neighborhood. But I think you kind of already answered that. We are out there. We don't have walls built up. We spend time outdoors. We see neighborhood kids walking by. We have campfires. We invite people walking by to come have a marshmallow. We open doors for people. We don't close our curtains. We are out there and we are open. So much about being a good neighbor is having an inviting posture, not just a mindset, but having an open posture. You're not going to want to go up and hug somebody who's standing there like this, but if you're open and willing to receive, you're very more likely to reach more people in the end. Are there any other practical ways that you can think of, either that we've implemented or any practical ways that you can advice that you could give to anyone out there who might be trying to find ways that they could show love to their neighbors that maybe is not the typical, like I said, casserole welcome basket kind of way?
Yeah. Honestly, the first thing that comes to my mind is it's not always easy. I feel like where we're not in that casserole welcoming basket, we're also really busy and really, have our own schedules and our own things going on that sometimes, like, if I'm being honest, I mean, there were so many days I would come home and I would just be tired. And the last thing I wanted to do was to welcome someone into my home. But every time I did, I felt blessed by it more than I feel like I was a blessing to others. So it's like you give and you receive at the same time. It's like one of the most amazing things. But as far as like practical things, I think keeping things really simple makes it doable. So, if you notice a kid who likes to hang around, invite them for dinner. Just take notice of what your neighbors do or what they like. You see someone who is having a hard time and go mow their grass. Like, go offer help with something. Just like, I guess, keep your eyes open. That would be really...
Yeah, because, I mean, we're definitely in not only a different area where it's a little harder, a little less natural to go like knocking on a neighbor's door, but at the same time, there are lots of neighbors, many neighborhoods where there are people who would even refuse helping a neighbor because they would be afraid of imposing on their neighbor. Like, it's somehow we've gotten this like turned around where offering help or offering assistance, being a good neighbor, is somehow intrusive on them. But just like, if you would ask a stranger to pray, if you could pray for them, the likelihood that they're going to turn you down is so slim. In fact, they're probably going to welcome it unless they're like so far theologically different than you are. Same with a neighbor. A neighbor is most likely not going to turn down help if they need it, especially if it's just done out of love and kindness and not out of like some, pity or whatever. If you can do it out of genuine love, offer help to your neighbors around you, it's more than likely going to be received with open arms.
Yeah, and to add to that, if you're on any form of social media, you are probably really familiar with things that go viral. I think that sometimes we see things that we're like, oh, there's hope for humanity, or like the like viral worthy acts of kindness, or like helping someone or doing something for others. And loving your neighbor well doesn't always have to be viral worthy. In fact, for me, probably my favorite times that I have done something for others is when it's been anonymous, when it's just been giving them that, just knowing that someone cares and loves them selflessly is one of my favorite things. So it doesn't always look like really extravagant and really planned. Sometimes it's just you get that thought in your head and you just act on it.
So obviously we are not done in our neighborhood. We don't know everyone. We haven't reached everyone. There's still plenty of people within our close sphere that we haven't had any sort of missional, whatever event, so how do we know when that job of being like our mission in our neighborhood, how do we know when that is done?
I don't think it's ever done. You know, some of the neighbors that we were really trying to reach in our old house, in our current house, we've been able to help some neighbors during an extremely tragic time in their lives. And what I believe only could have come from God, the way that all of that lined up, it ended up involving one of our old neighbors who we're still in contact with. And it still amazes me that God will use all of it. And even if you have to move and you don't feel like you're done, or your neighbor moves away and you don't feel like you finished the work that you felt you had to do, like God will use it all. And yeah.
Your sphere is always growing, always changing, and your influence that you have on somebody may be different today than it was yesterday, and they may be gone tomorrow and someone new may come in and take their place. So yeah, your neighborhood is an always changing mission field, whether you're there or whether your neighbors are there or whether you're somewhere else and they move away. We always have a mission field right in our backyard. Whether you live in the country or whether you live in the city, there's still people around you. Ashley, thank you so much for joining us tonight. I appreciate you taking your time to be here with us. Is there anything else maybe that we didn't cover that you'd like to share before we go?
Honestly, sometimes when we talked a lot about missional mindset and being a missionary in your own neighborhood. If you've grown up in the church, you probably are familiar with missionaries who go to third world countries, and you raise money and we send them off, and that is amazing and that is needed because everyone should be reached. But sometimes, we forget that we are missionaries in our own backyard, and there are people right next door and right in your area who need reached, who need Jesus. And how amazing is it that as it can be as simple as loving your neighbor, to see in you that Jesus is the answer, and that's what makes the difference. So just love your neighbor well.
Perfect. Love your neighbor well. If we could sum up tonight, you can watch the TLDR version. Skip to the last couple minutes. Love your neighbor. I'm pretty sure Ashley's not the first one to have coined that phrase.
Sure
love your neighbor. Thank you guys for joining us on this episode of the Thrive Show. Go out there, have thriving homes, have thriving spheres, thrive in your relationship with yourself and with God, and use those all together to thrive in your life. We'll see you next week. Thanks for listening or watching, however you're joining us. Be sure to tune in again. Have a great week.